The Galactic Council chambers were built to impress. Thousands of seats arranged in concentric circles, each one holding a representative from a different species. The chamber could hold 50,000 beings, and today every seat was full. They had come to witness the trial of humanity. Ambassador Do-hyun Kwon stood alone on the central platform. Above him, holographic displays showed the evidence. Human warships firing nuclear weapons, Marines using tactics banned for centuries, the destruction of the Krethak flagship after it tried to retreat. Every violation displayed in perfect detail. The Council's speaker, an ancient being from the Quillian Collective, addressed the assembly. Ambassador Kwon, humanity stands accused of 17 counts of violating the Galactic Warfare Convention. How do you answer these charges? Do-hyun took a breath. He was one human among thousands of aliens, most of whom wanted to see his species punished. His next words could doom Earth to isolation, could cut humanity off from the galaxy forever. Guilty, Do-hyun said clearly. We did everything you accuse us of. We used banned weapons. We employed brutal tactics. We showed no mercy to enemies who showed no mercy to civilians. The chamber erupted in noise. The speaker called for order. Do-hyun continued, but let me ask this council a question. Where were you? The noise quieted. Do-hyun pulled up his own displays. Settlement 7 sent their distress call on the morning of the 15th. The Thandorian Republic, their sworn allies, received it. They dispatched a fleet. That fleet would have arrived 8 days later. Settlement 7 had 12 hours before the Krethak completed their invasion. He showed a calculation on the displays. 8 days minus 12 hours equals 7 days, 12 hours too late. We were 4 hours away. We arrived in time. 3 million Valerians are alive because we broke your rules. A delegate from the Vormish Confederation stood. You could have waited for proper authorization. You could have coordinated with Thandorian forces. You chose to act alone using unacceptable methods. And 3 million beings would have died while we waited for your permission, Do-hyun shot back. You write conventions in comfortable rooms far from the dying. You debate proper procedure while civilians scream. We don't have that luxury. Another delegate spoke from the Korthian Empire. Your species comes from a violent world. You bring that violence into civilized space. You must be controlled. Do-hyun felt anger rise in his chest. Controlled? You mean leashed. You want to force us to fight your way. To follow rules that sound noble but mean death when real crises come. Tell me, how many colonies have died while waiting for proper military responses? He pulled up more data. The Krethak have attacked 17 colonies in the past decade. How many were saved by conventional military response? 3. How many were saved by human intervention at Settlement 7? 1 colony, 3 million people in 4 hours. Your methods are barbaric, the Vormish delegate insisted. Our methods work, Do-hyun countered. We come from a world that tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. We learned to fight. We learned to survive. We learned that pretty wars are for species who can afford to lose. We can't afford to lose, so we fight to win. The speaker raised a hand for silence. Ambassador, your passion is noted. But passion does not excuse violation of law. The Council must vote on sanctions against Earth. Before the vote could be called, a new figure appeared on the central platform. Administrator Chirex, transmitted from Settlement 7. The Council had to recognize him. He was the victim in this case. Council members, Chirex said, his translator making his chirps into words. I am Administrator Chirex of Settlement 7. I sent the distress call that started this. I called for the Thandorians. The humans came instead. He paused, his bird-like eyes scanning the assembly. I was terrified when I saw them. Their ships looked like instruments of war. Their soldiers looked like mechanical demons. Everything about them screamed danger. But they saved us. Chirex pulled up footage from the battle. This is Sergeant Taeyang Shin. He killed 3 Krethak soldiers who were executing civilians. Then he escorted those civilians to safety. He could have left them. His mission was combat, not rescue. But he stayed with them, protected them, made sure they reached shelter. More footage appeared. This is Dr. Yoonji Han. She treated Krethak soldiers who had been trying to kill her hours earlier. When asked why, she said, patients don't get to pick their doctors. This is the brutality you fear. Chirex's voice grew stronger. The humans died for us. 43 of them gave their lives for Valerians they had never met. For a colony that wasn't their responsibility. For people who couldn't even pronounce their names properly. They fought ugly because fighting pretty would have meant our deaths. He looked directly at the assembly. You want to punish them for saving us. You want to restrict them, control them, force them to follow rules that sound noble but mean death in practice. I say this to the Council. If you punish Earth for what they did at Settlement 7, you tell every victim in the galaxy that they will die while waiting for help that follows proper procedure. The chamber fell silent. Then Chirex added, 3 million Valerians stand with Earth. We will not forget who came when we called. The vote was called. The chamber's holographic displays showed the tally. Species after species cast their vote. Some voted for harsh sanctions. Some voted for moderate restrictions. Some voted for no punishment at all. The count was close, painfully close. In the end, the sanctions failed by a narrow margin. Earth would remain a probationary member of the Galactic Council. They would face increased scrutiny. Their military operations would be monitored. But they would not be expelled, would not be leashed, would not be forced to watch civilians die while following protocols. Do-hyun stood on the platform as the vote concluded. He had won barely, but he knew the real battle was just beginning. Earth would never be fully accepted. They would always be the violent ones, the dangerous ones, the species everyone feared, but they would also be the ones who came when called. Admiral Nari watched the council proceedings from the Terra's fury. When the vote concluded, she felt no triumph. They had avoided punishment, but the galaxy's message was clear. Humanity would be tolerated, not embraced, feared, not trusted. Captain Minho approached her. We did the right thing, Admiral. I know, Nari replied. But doing the right thing doesn't always lead to happy endings. The galaxy will call us when they need us, but they'll never truly accept us. We're too different, too violent, too willing to break rules they consider sacred. Maybe they don't need to accept us, Minho suggested. Maybe they just need to know we're here. 6 months passed. The galaxy tried to return to normal, but normal had changed. Species who had never considered humans before now watched them carefully, some with fear, some with curiosity, some with hope. When the Krethak Dominion attempted another attack, this time on a Thendorian outpost, something unprecedented happened. The Thendorians called for help, and they specifically requested human assistance. Captain Minho led the response. The Indomitable arrived with a full task force that included Thandorian and Valerian ships. It was the first truly joint operation between humans and other species. The Krethak took one look at the combined fleet and retreated without firing a shot. The reputation of Settlement 7 had spread. Dr. Yoonji Han found herself teaching at a new medical academy on Settlement 7. Students from 6 different species learned human emergency medicine. It was controversial but effective. Her students learned to think fast, to improvise, to save lives when proper procedure would take too long. Lieutenant Yuna Choi trained Valerian pilots in advanced combat tactics. They would never be as tough as humans, but they learned the lessons Earth had to teach. Not about being the strongest or the fastest, but about refusing to quit. About fighting smart when you couldn't fight hard. On Settlement 7, a monument was completed. It stood in the colony's central square, a black stone obelisk inscribed with names. At the top, in multiple languages, it read, "To those who answer the call, regardless of who made it." The monument listed 43 names, 43 humans who died saving people they had never met. Valerian children left flowers there every day. Pixis, now studying to be a diplomat, visited often. She wanted to bridge the gap between species, to help the galaxy understand that the humans who terrified everyone were also the humans who had saved her life. Ambassador Do-hyun remained at his post, despite everything. He knew he would never be popular, never be trusted by most of the council. But he also knew that somewhere in the galaxy right now, someone was in danger. And when that someone called for help, Earth would answer. Commander Jiho Park, now captain of his own destroyer, met with Admiral Nari on a space station orbiting Earth. They looked down at their planet, blue and beautiful and deadly. Storms swirled across the surface. Earthquakes shook continents. Volcanoes erupted. Earth was still trying to kill its children, and its children were still refusing to die. "Do you think we'll ever be accepted?" Jiho asked. Nari smiled slightly. "No, we're too different. Too violent. Too willing to do what others won't. But acceptance was never the goal." "What is the goal?"
"Survival," Nari said.
"For us, for them, for anyone who needs it. We He spent millions of years learning to survive the unsurvivable. 2 days after the battle, the Thandorian fleet finally arrived. Fleet Commander Welrick stood on his flagship's observation deck, looking at Settlement 7 below. He should have felt relief. Instead, he felt growing horror with each report his officers brought him. The humans deployed nuclear weapons in atmosphere, his weapons officer reported, voice shaking. Multiple warheads. They used kinetic bombardment on Krethak positions near civilian areas. They executed prisoners who resisted surrender. Welrick closed his eyes. The Thandorians were known for their careful, methodical approach to warfare. They followed the Galactic Warfare Convention to the letter. Every article, every rule, every guideline existed to prevent exactly what the humans had done. How many civilian casualties? Welrick asked. Preliminary reports show fewer than 300, almost all from the initial Krethak bombardment before human arrival. 300 dead out of 3 million. It was a miracle by any standard. But the methods used to achieve that miracle made Welrick's stomach turn. The humans had fought like savages using weapons that had been banned for 3 centuries. He requested a meeting with Admiral Nari Song. They met aboard the Terra's Fury, in a conference room that still smelled of burnt metal and weapon discharge. Nari stood when Welrick entered. She was small compared to him, but something about her presence filled the room. Fleet Commander Welrick, Nari said, offering the human hand gesture. I'm glad you arrived safely. Settlement 7 is secure. Yes, I can see that, Welrick replied stiffly. He did not take her hand. Admiral Song, I've reviewed your combat logs. You have violated 17 articles of the Galactic Warfare Convention. Your fleet used weapons of mass destruction. You executed prisoners. You employed tactics that have been classified as war crimes for 300 years. Nari's expression didn't change. I saved 3 million civilians. Using barbaric methods, Welrick countered. Your success doesn't excuse your violations. The Galactic Council will want answers. They may charge you and your officers with war crimes. Let them, Nari said simply. She walked to the window looking out at Settlement 7. Tell me something, Fleet Commander. When would your fleet have arrived if you had received the distress call? 8 days, Welrick admitted. And how many of those 3 million would have survived 8 days? Welrick said nothing. They both knew the answer. Nari continued, her voice cold. Your conventions mean nothing when civilians are dying. You write rules in comfortable committee rooms, far from the screaming and the burning. You debate proper warfare while people suffer. We don't have that luxury. We fight to win and protect the innocent. You fight like animals, Welrick snapped. Like the savages from your death world. Yes, Nari agreed without shame. We fight like survivors. Like people who know what it means to face extinction. We fight with everything we have because anything less means failure, and failure means death. The Council will never accept this. You've proven you're as dangerous as everyone feared. Nari turned to face him fully. We've proven we're effective. You would have arrived to find corpses and ruins. Instead, you found survivors and defeated enemies. If that makes us dangerous, then the galaxy needs to decide if they want safety or comfort. The argument spread through galactic channels faster than light. The humans' intervention became the biggest scandal in decades. Species after species denounced Earth's methods. The Galactic Council called emergency sessions. Diplomats screamed about human brutality. Ambassador Do-Yun Kwan sat in his office on Earth watching the news feeds with a heavy heart. He was humanity's voice to the galaxy. And right now the galaxy wanted humans silenced forever. His communication console was flooded with demands. Surrender Admiral Song for trial. Restrict human military operations. Accept limits on human weapons and tactics. Do-Hyun knew what those demands really meant. They wanted to leash humanity, to force them to fight the galaxy's way. And if the next crisis came, if civilians needed help, those leashes would mean death. He began preparing his defense, knowing it might be his last official act as ambassador. He gathered evidence, compiled reports, reviewed every second of the battle footage. The case against humanity looked bad on paper. In reality, it looked even worse. But on Settlement 7, something unexpected happened. Pixis walked through the colony's central square. Around her, 3 million Valerians were gathering. They had called this assembly themselves, without leadership approval. They carried signs made from scraps of metal and cloth. The signs had simple messages written in multiple languages. Thank you, humans. Earth saved us. We remember. Administrator Chirex tried to stop it at first. He knew the political implications. By thanking the humans, the Valerians were taking a side in a galactic debate. But when he saw the crowds, when he saw the children who were alive because of human intervention, he put down his communicator and joined them instead. The demonstration lasted 6 hours. 3 million voices chanting gratitude to a species most of them had never met before. News drones captured it all, broadcasting the images across the galaxy. Chirex gave an interview that would be played 1 billion times. I was terrified when the humans arrived, he told the reporter honestly. Everything about them screamed danger. Their ships, their weapons, their soldiers. But they saved us. They fought for us like we were their own people. They died for us. 43 humans gave their lives for Valerians they had never met. But their methods violated conventions, the reporter pressed. Chirex looked directly into the camera. My daughter is alive because those humans violated conventions. My grandson draws pictures of the Marines who saved his school. 3 million of my people breathe because someone had the courage to fight ugly when fighting pretty would have meant our deaths. Let the council debate ethics. We will remember who came when we called. The interview went viral. Other species who had suffered Krethak attacks began speaking up. They talked about their own unanswered distress calls, their own colonies that died while waiting for help that followed proper protocols. The narrative began to shift, slowly, painfully. On the Terra's Fury, Admiral Nari received a communication from Earth Command. The message was simple. The Council wanted her to appear for questioning. They were building a case for war crimes prosecution. Earth's government was trying to decide whether to comply or refuse. Nari read the message and laughed. It was not a happy sound. They want to prosecute me for winning. Captain Minho stood beside her. What will you do, Admiral? I'll go, Nari said. I'll face their council. I'll answer their questions, and I'll make them understand something they've forgotten. Safety has a cost. Someone has to be willing to pay it. Dr. Yunji Han was still on Settlement 7, working with Valerian medical staff to treat the long-term wounded. A Valerian doctor approached her during a break. His name was Thrix, and he had been working beside Yunji for 2 days straight. Is it true? Thrix asked. That your people might face punishment for saving us? Yunji nodded tiredly. The galaxy doesn't like how we fight. They think we're too violent. You are violent, Thrix said. Then he added, but you're also here. You came when no one else would. You used your violence to protect the weak instead of prey on them. That matters. Yunji looked at him. Does it? Your people are safe, but now mine might pay the price. Then we speak for you, Thrix said firmly. Every one of us. 3 million voices telling the galaxy that Earth saved us when no one else would. Let them try to prosecute that. Across Settlement 7, similar conversations were happening. Valerian civilians talking to human soldiers. Grateful people meeting the warriors who had terrified and saved them in equal measure. Bonds forming between a peaceful species and a violent one, built on shared trauma and unexpected heroism. Sergeant Taiyang sat with a group of Valerian children. They asked him questions about Earth, about his armor, about the battle. He answered as best he could, trying to explain things in ways they could understand. Were you scared? One child asked. Taiyang thought about it. Yes, I'm always scared in battle. Fear keeps you alive. But I was more scared of what would happen if we didn't fight. Why did you come? Another asked. We're not your people. Taiyang looked at the children. They were alive, safe, asking questions instead of suffering in Krethak slave camps. You needed help. That made you our people. That's how humans see it. The political storm continued to build. The council prepared their case. Earth prepared its defense. Admiral Nari prepared to face judgment. But on Settlement 7, 3 million Valerians prepared something else. They prepared to show the galaxy that sometimes the monsters who answer your call are better than the friends who don't. In his office, Do-hyun reviewed his speech one final time. In a few days, he would stand before the Galactic Council and defend humanity's actions. It might be hopeless. The evidence against them was overwhelming. They had broken every rule, but they had also saved 3 million lives, and Do-hyun was prepared to burn every bridge in the galaxy to protect the people who had the courage to break rules when rules meant death. The humans had come when called, even though the call wasn't for them. Now it was time to see if the galaxy would punish them for it. Commander Jiho Park stood in the drop pod as it screamed through the atmosphere. The metal walls around him glowed red from the friction heat. His tactical display showed 2 other pods in his unit had been destroyed by ground fire. 20 Marines dead before they even touched ground. He made a note to make the Krethak pay for each one. The pod hit the surface with a force that would have killed an unarmored human. Jiho's powered combat suit absorbed most of the impact, but he still felt his teeth rattle. The pod door blew outward, and he was moving before the smoke cleared. Training took over. Check your sector, identify threats, engage. 50 meters away, a Krethak patrol was executing Valerian civilians. They had them lined up against a wall, plasma rifles ready. Jiho's squad saw it at the same moment he did. None of them needed orders. Sergeant Taeyang Shin moved first. His combat armor made him stronger and faster than any Krethak warrior could hope to be. He covered the distance in seconds, his rail carbine firing in short, controlled bursts. 3 Krethak fell before they even realized they were under attack. The others turned to fight, but they were too slow. Sergeant Soman Lee came from their flank, her weapon cutting down 2 more. Jiho took the last one himself, a clean headshot from 30 meters. The entire engagement took 11 seconds. The Valerian civilians stood frozen in terror. They looked at their rescuers and saw something worse than their captors. The human Marines were massive in their armor, faceless behind reflective visors moving with mechanical precision. One of the civilians, a young Valerian named Pixis, started to back away. Taeyang noticed. He approached slowly, keeping his weapon pointed down. "You're safe now," he said through his translator. His voice came out filtered and mechanical, but he tried to make it gentle. "We're here to help." Pixis stared up at him. This creature was twice her height in that armor. It looked like a walking tank, covered in weapons and scarred metal. But something in its voice, in the way it moved carefully to not frighten her more, cut through her fear. "What are you?" Pixis whispered. "Human," Taeyang replied. "From Earth, can you walk? We need to get you to the shelters." The squad escorted the civilians to safety, moving through streets that had become a war zone. Everywhere, human Marines fought Krethak soldiers. The humans moved like they had been born for this, like war was in their blood. They covered each other's movements, communicated with hand signals when silence was needed, and showed no fear even when outnumbered. Above the planet, Admiral Nari Song watched the battle from her command ship's bridge. The Krethak fleet was broken, scattered. Most of their ships were destroyed or fleeing, but their flagship was trying to escape to hyperspace, and that was unacceptable. "Helm, pursuit course," Nari ordered. "All power to engines." Her executive officer looked uncertain. "Admiral, the flagship is already damaged. They're running. Do we need to pursue?" Nari turned to face him. Her expression was cold. "That flagship bombarded civilian shelters. They killed refugees who were already victims once before. They attacked under our protection." She turned back to the view screen. "No enemy who attacks civilians under our watch leaves alive." Set an example. The Terra's Fury, humanity's newest dreadnought, accelerated. It was built for war, its engines powerful enough to chase down anything in space. The Krethak flagship was fast, but not fast enough. The human ship caught them just as they were preparing to jump. "Fire all forward batteries," Nari commanded. The Terra's Fury's main guns fired. Mass driver rounds, each one a solid slug of metal moving at incredible speed. The Krethak flagship's shields failed. Its armor failed. The ship came apart like paper in a storm, breaking into thousands of pieces that scattered across space. On the bridge, the crew watched silently. They had just destroyed a ship that held 3,000 Krethak. It should have felt wrong, but none of them felt regret. Those 3,000 had been willing to kill millions. This was justice, human style. Swift, brutal, final. Back on Settlement 7, the battle was ending. The Krethak ground forces were surrendering in groups, throwing down their weapons. They had expected easy victims. Instead, they found predators. Human Marines moved through the colony with ruthless efficiency, securing sectors, clearing buildings, finding civilians. Dr. Yoonji Han arrived with the medical teams. She was small even for a human, barely 5 feet tall, but she ran toward danger like she was fireproof. Her team set up field hospitals in the colony's community centers. The wounded came in waves. Valerians with plasma burns, Krethak soldiers with gunshot wounds. Yoonji treated them all the same. A young medic hesitated when a Krethak prisoner was brought in, still in restraints. "Doctor, this one fought against us," the medic said. "Shouldn't the Valerians treat their own first?" Yoonji didn't even look up from the Krethak she was working on. "We treat whoever is dying first. That's the rule." Our enemy today might be our ally tomorrow, but right now he's a patient and patients don't get to pick their doctors. She worked for 16 hours straight, moving from patient to patient. Her hands were steady, her focus absolute. This was another kind of warfare, fighting death instead of enemies. The Krethak soldier she saved would later tell others about the human doctor who treated him with the same care she gave her own people. Captain Minho stood in the colony's command center with Administrator Chirex. Through the windows, they could see human patrols establishing a perimeter. The battle was over. 4 hours and 37 minutes from start to finish. 3 million Valerians saved. The Krethak invasion force destroyed. Your casualties, Chirex asked quietly. 43 dead. 97 wounded, Minho replied. He said it matter-of-factly, but inside he felt each loss. 43 families would get the notification. 43 empty chairs at dinner tables back on Earth. And the Krethak? Approximately 12,000 dead. 5,000 prisoners. Chirex did the math in his head. The humans had been outnumbered nearly 4-1, yet they had won so completely it looked easy. How did you do this? Minho looked out at his Marines. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day. We learned to fight things bigger than us, stronger than us, more numerous than us. We learned that size doesn't matter. Technology doesn't matter. What matters is refusing to quit. The galaxy will fear you, Chirex said. They already do, Minho replied. But 3 million of your people are alive. Does their fear matter more than that? Chirex had no answer. He watched the humans work, securing the colony, treating the wounded, repairing damage. They moved with purpose, with discipline. They were terrifying, yes, but they were also here and his people were safe. In orbit, the last Krethak ship jumped to hyperspace, fleeing for its life. The crew would carry stories back to their empire. Stories about the humans, the Deathworlders, the ones who fought with weapons that violated every convention and tactics that seemed insane. They would tell about a fleet that came not for glory or payment, but simply because someone had called for help. Lieutenant Yuna landed her fighter on the carrier's deck. Her hands were shaking from adrenaline, but she was smiling. She had shot down 8 enemy craft. It was a good day's work. As she climbed out of her cockpit, a technician handed her a damage report. Her fighter was covered in scorch marks and had 3 holes in the fuselage. You're lucky to be alive, Lieutenant, the technician said. Yuna grinned. Luck had nothing to do with it. I'm from Earth. We're all lucky to be alive. Night fell over Settlement 7. The fires were out, the wounded were stabilized, and the colony was secure. Human soldiers stood guard while Valerian civilians tried to process what had happened. They had called for help and gotten it, but from the wrong species. From the monsters of the galaxy. From the ones everyone feared, but those monsters had saved them, had fought for them, had died for them. In the shelters, young Pixis looked at the human Marine standing guard at the door. Sergeant Taeyang had removed his helmet and she could see his face now. He was young, probably not much older than her. He looked tired but alert, watching the darkness for threats. When he noticed her looking, he smiled. It was a small smile, gentle, meant to reassure. Pixis smiled back. Maybe these humans were monsters, but they were monsters who had come when called, who had fought against worse monsters who had saved her life and the lives of millions. She decided that if these were Earth's monsters, then Earth must be an interesting place. Warlord Zethik stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching the colony below with satisfaction. The invasion was proceeding exactly as planned. His ground forces had secured 3 landing zones, and the Valerian militia was already falling back toward the city center. In 6 hours, maybe less, Settlement 7 would belong to the Krethak Dominion. Status report, Zethix ordered. His tactical officer, a young warrior eager to prove himself, responded immediately. All landing zones secure, Warlord. The Valerians have no heavy weapons. Their defenses are collapsing. We estimate complete control within 4 hours, Zethix nodded. This was his 43rd conquest. He knew the pattern by heart. First came the orbital bombardment to break their spirit, then the landing to break their bodies. Finally came the selection, separating those who could be sold as slaves from those who were simply killed. The Valerians would fetch a good price. They were docile, educated, perfect for labor colonies. Warlord, I'm detecting hyperspace signatures, the sensor operator called out. Multiple contacts, jumping in system. Zethix felt a moment of annoyance. The Thandorians arriving early. Their intelligence had suggested 8 days before any response. It seemed the Thandorians had been closer than expected. No matter. His fleet was strong, his ships were positioned well. The Thandorians were cautious fighters, slow and methodical. He could hold them off long enough to secure hostages. Once he had civilians under his guns, the Thandorians would negotiate rather than risk innocent lives. Move the fleet to defensive formation, Zethix commanded. Prepare for standard engagement. Target their command ships first. The hyperspace signatures grew stronger. Zethix watched his display, expecting to see the familiar profiles of Thandorian exploration cruisers. Instead, what emerged from hyperspace made his blood run cold. The ships were wrong. Too aggressive in their design, covered in weapon ports, their hulls dark and scarred. They dropped from hyperspace in a combat spread that made his tactical computer scream warnings. These weren't exploration ships. These were warships built by someone who understood violence in ways the civilized galaxy had forgotten. What are those? Zethix demanded. His intelligence officer frantically searched the databases. Running identification. No match for Thandorian vessels. Cross-referencing with known designs. Warlord, these are human ships. From Earth. Zethix had heard stories. Every species in the galaxy had heard stories about the Deathworlders. They came from a planet so violent that simply surviving there required constant warfare. Their gravity was crushing, their atmosphere was poisonous to most species, and they had evolved as apex predators. Most civilized species avoided them. What are humans doing here? Zethix growled. This colony isn't under their protection. Before anyone could answer, his ship rocked from impact. The tactical display lit up with warnings. 3 of his heavy cruisers simply vanished, torn apart by weapons moving faster than his sensors could track. The humans hadn't sent a warning. They hadn't announced their intentions. They had just opened fire. Evasive maneuvers. Zethix shouted. Return fire! What kind of weapons are those? Kinetic kill missiles traveling at 0.4 light speed, his weapons officer reported, terror clear in his voice. Railguns. Nuclear warheads. Warlord. These weapons violate 6 different galactic warfare conventions. Zethix didn't care about conventions. He cared about survival. All ships concentrate fire on their lead vessels. We outnumber them. But numbers meant nothing against predators. The human fleet moved through his formations like sharks through a school of fish. Their fighters, small craft that should have been easy targets, dove through his point defense fire without fear. They pulled maneuvers that should have killed their pilots, turns that generated forces no living being should survive. On Settlement 7's surface, Chirex stared at his communication screen in shock. The face looking back at him was alien in a way that made his instincts scream. Smooth skin, forward-facing eyes, a mouthful of flat teeth that somehow looked more threatening than any fangs. This was a predator species, and every part of his bird-like brain knew it. Settlement 7, this is Admiral Nari Song of the United Terran Space Command, the human said. Her voice was calm, but underneath that calm was something sharp and dangerous. We received your distress call, hold on. We're coming in. You're not... We called the Thandorians, Chirex stammered. We were closer, Admiral Nari replied. The screen showed the space battle raging above the colony. Krethik ships were exploding, torn apart by weapons that moved too fast and hit too hard. Stay in your shelters. This will be over soon. The transmission ended. Chirex looked up at the sky through his office window. Explosions lit up the darkness like new stars being born and dying. The Krethak fleet was burning, and the humans had barely started fighting. On the Indomitable's bridge, Captain Minho watched his tactical display with cold focus. His ship had killed 2 Krethak cruisers in the opening salvo. Now they were moving to engage the ships bombing the colony's surface. Target that heavy destroyer, Minho ordered. The one firing on the civilian sectors. Kill it. Lieutenant Hana coordinated with the weapons bay. Firing solution locked, firing! The Indomitable's main railgun spoke, sending a solid metal slug accelerating to incredible speeds. The Krethak destroyer's shields meant nothing. The slug punched through them like paper. Through the armor, through the ship itself. The destroyer broke in half, both pieces tumbling toward the planet's atmosphere where they would burn up. Multiple Krethak fighters inbound, the tactical officer warned. They're trying to hit our carrier groups. Let them try, Minho said. He switched channels. Lieutenant Yuna, you're cleared to engage. In the carrier's fighter bay, Lieutenant Yuna Choi was already strapped into her cockpit. Around her, 200 other pilots did the same. They were the best Earth had to offer, trained on a world where one mistake in atmosphere meant death. Space combat was almost relaxing by comparison. All fighters, this is Yuna. Stay tight, watch your spacing, and remember your training. These Krethak think they can fly. Let's show them what real pilots look like. The fighters launched, streaking toward the incoming enemy craft. The Krethak outnumbered them 3-1, but numbers didn't matter. What mattered was skill, and humans had spent centuries learning to fly in conditions that would kill most species. Yuna's fighter dove through a storm of plasma fire. Her console screamed warnings about incoming threats, but she ignored them. She had flown through Earth's upper atmosphere during a magnetic storm once just for training. This was nothing. She locked onto a Krethak fighter and fired. The enemy craft exploded. "That's one," she called over the squadron channel. "Who's keeping score?" The battle became a massacre. The Krethak had superior numbers and advanced technology, but they were fighting an enemy that didn't care about fighting fair. Humans fought to win. They fought with weapons that violated treaties and tactics that seemed suicidal. They fought like everything they had ever killed or been killed by on their deadly homeworld. Above Settlement 7, Warlord Zethix watched his fleet die. Half his ships were gone. The rest were damaged or retreating. His ground forces were reporting that something was dropping from orbit, coming in fast. "What's dropping?" he demanded. "Unknown objects, Warlord. They're not using retro rockets or anti-gravity. They're just falling like meteors." Zethix pulled up the visual feed. He saw metal pods streaking through the atmosphere, trailing fire. Some were destroyed by his ground forces, but most made it through. They hit the ground like bombs, creating craters around the colony perimeter. Then the pods opened and nightmares emerged. The humans wore armor that made them look like mechanized demons. They moved with deadly purpose, their weapons already firing. Zethix watched as one of his best ground units encountered a human patrol. The engagement lasted seconds. His warriors fought with training and plasma rifles. The humans fought with railguns and something worse. They fought with a savagery that came from millions of years of being Earth's apex predator. "This is impossible," Zethix whispered. "What kind of monsters are these?" His intelligence officer had finally pulled up Earth's full classification. Category 12 Deathworld Warlord. Gravity 1.3 times standard. Atmosphere contains poison to most species. Evolution shaped by constant predation and warfare. Dominant species evolved as persistence hunters. Recommendation: avoid contact. Zethix looked at the classification and realized the terrible truth. They hadn't come to rescue the Valerians. They had come to hunt, and the Krethak were the prey. The alarm screamed through Settlement 7's command center. Chirex pressed his feathered hands against the control panel, watching the orbital defense platforms explode one by one. Each explosion meant another shield gone, another layer of protection stripped away. His people were dying up there, and he could do nothing but watch. "Get me the emergency channel," Chirex ordered, his translator making his bird-like chirps into words the computer could understand. "Send the distress signal to the Thandorian Republic. Tell them we need immediate help." The young communications officer, barely trained for this kind of emergency, worked frantically at her station. "Sending now, Administrator." "But there's interference from the solar flare. The signal might scatter." Chirex didn't care about technical problems. 3 million civilians lived on Settlement 7. Most of them were refugees who had already lost one home to the Krethak Dominion. They came here seeking safety, and now the monsters had found them again. The Thandorians were their allies. They had promised protection. They had to come. Above the colony, the Krethak warships moved into position like predators circling wounded prey. Their ships were massive, covered in weapons that could level cities. The invasion pods launched, hundreds of them, streaking toward the surface like falling stars. Each pod carried 50 Krethak soldiers, trained killers who would show no mercy. Chirex looked at the countdown timer on his screen. 12 hours, maybe less. That's how long his people had before the Krethak ground forces overwhelmed the colony's weak defenses. The Valerian militia was brave but small, armed with nothing more than old rifles and determination. The transmission went out, bouncing through quantum relays across space. It carried a simple message: Settlement 7 under attack. Krethak Dominion invasion force. 3 million civilians in danger, requesting immediate military assistance. But the solar flare twisted the signal, sending it through old colonial pathways that hadn't been used in decades. Far away, in a different part of space, a human warship drifted on patrol. The UTSC Indomitable was a destroyer, built for war, covered in scars from battles fought and won. On the bridge, Captain Minho Kang sat in his command chair, reviewing routine reports. It was supposed to be a quiet patrol. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," Lieutenant Hanayu called from her station. She was the communications officer, trained to catch even the faintest signals in the noise of space. "It's a distress call, but it's fragmentary, coming through old relay networks." Minho stood up, walking over to her station. "Can you clean it up?" Hana's fingers flew across her controls. "Working on it. The encoding is Thandorian standard, but the message is badly damaged. Give me a minute." The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. The crew watched as Hana worked, pulling pieces of the message from the static. Slowly, words formed on her screen. "Colony under attack. Civilians in danger. Immediate assistance required." "I've got coordinates," Hana said. "Settlement 7, Valerian Colony. They're being hit by Krethak forces." "The message was meant for the Thandorians, sir." Minho felt his jaw tighten. The Krethak. He knew their reputation. They swept through systems, conquering and enslaving. They didn't take prisoners unless those prisoners could be sold. They didn't show mercy because mercy was weakness to them. "Where's the nearest Thandorian fleet?" Minho asked. His executive officer, Commander Jiho Park, checked the tactical display. 8 days away at best speed, sir. Settlement 7 doesn't have 8 days. According to this data, they have maybe 12 hours before the Krethak complete their landing operation. 8 days versus 12 hours. The math was brutal and simple. If they waited for the Thandorians, they would arrive to find nothing but graves and ruins. Minho had seen what the Krethak did to conquered colonies. He had viewed the reports, seen the images. 3 million civilians would die if no one helped them. "We're 4 hours away," Jiho said quietly. "But sir, we're not their allies. That message wasn't meant for us." Minho looked at the distress call still displayed on the screen. He thought about the rules, the protocols, the careful diplomatic balance that kept Earth on the edge of galactic society. Humans were newcomers, barely tolerated by the older species. They had a reputation as violent, brutal, uncivilized. Every human ship carried the weight of that reputation. But 3 million people were about to die. "Get me Admiral Nari Song," Minho ordered. The carrier group was only an hour away, conducting exercises. When Admiral Nari's face appeared on the screen, Minho could see she was on her battle bridge. The Admiral was a small woman, but everyone in the fleet knew she was made of steel and fire. Minho explained the situation quickly. The distress call, the timeline, the choice. Admiral Nari didn't hesitate. "How many ships do you need, Captain?" "All of them, ma'am." For a moment, silence filled the channel. Then Admiral Nari smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just found prey. "You'll have 67 ships, Captain Kang. I'm authorizing emergency intervention. We launch in 30 minutes. The Krethak want to attack civilians under our watch. Let's teach them why you don't pick fights with Deathworlders." The channel closed. Minho turned to his crew. They were watching him, waiting for orders. These were men and women from Earth, from a planet that had tried to kill humanity for millions of years. They came from a world of storms and earthquakes, of predators and diseases, of wars and suffering. They were survivors. "All hands, battle stations," Minho announced over the ship's communication system. "Prepare for combat jump. We have civilians to save." The Indomitable's engines roared to life. Around it, 66 other human warships did the same. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, frigates. They formed up in combat formation. Weapons charging, shields powering up. They weren't the biggest fleet in the galaxy. They weren't the most advanced. But they were something else. They were coming. On Settlement 7, Chirex watched the Krethak pods land outside the colony walls. The ground shook with each impact. Soon the killing would begin. He had sent his message to the Thandorians, but deep in his heart he knew the truth. They wouldn't arrive in time. His people would die here on this world they had thought was safe. The Krethak would show no mercy. They never did. Chirex didn't know that help was already coming. He didn't know that 67 warships from Earth were tearing through hyperspace at speeds that terrified their crews. He didn't know that humans had heard his call and decided that it didn't matter who the message was meant for. Someone was crying out for help, and that was enough. The human fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving nothing but radiation and determination in their wake. In 4 hours, the Krethak would learn a lesson that would spread across the galaxy. They would learn what happened when you threatened civilians while humans were listening. They would learn why Earth was classified as a death world, and why its people were the most dangerous thing in space.